What's going on, you guys? Michael here. Today I'm going to walk through the exact investment breakdown of our fifth short-term rental property that we put on Airbnb and Vrbo. We bought this property in November of 2021, and we had just finished like a 7-month escapade after my wife and I quit our jobs, traveled in a camper van all over the country. Our living expenses were so low. We had like $1,000 a month van payment and food, and that was really it. And we had all this money, like 30 to 40K a month on average, coming in from our 4 other Airbnbs. So we had so much money saved up, and then we also eventually did some cash out refis on 3 of our properties. So we had a lot of money that we just needed to invest. So what we were looking for is a place with reverse seasonality to that of Nashville and Gatlinburg, which is where we had our first 4 properties were split between those 2 cities. This property was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that we started evaluating. The reason I looked at and liked Fort Lauderdale as a market, it was a market that is just outside of Miami. It's growing in population, it's growing in popularity, and it's also close by to some professional sporting events. There's like boat shows throughout the year. But the biggest thing is that the heavier tourism months and the bigger cash flow opportunity months were reverse of the Tennessee markets, right? Tennessee's busy from March to October, and then, Gatlinburg's pretty busy for the holidays through the end of the year, but both markets are very slow in January and February. Fort Lauderdale, however, is very busy December, January, February, March, and April. And then it's still okay during the summer vacation months, but it really slows down at the end of the summer. It's just hot, back to school months, and then it's hurricane season, September and October, before it starts picking up again. So reverse seasonality is something we were looking for because it leveled out our cash flow throughout the year. So instead of just having really high cash flow from March to December and then having a couple slower months, not that it was like a detrimental to our business or anything like that. It was just nice to think, hey, what if we just leveled out the cash flow some? So it was like easier to project our income. So that was the reason behind this property. And since we had a good bit of money saved up, we were looking for a value add property. The housing prices had just started to get ridiculously expensive. Interest rates were just coming off all-time lows. So we looked for a property. We wanted it to be 4-bedroom. And if you look on a map on Fort Lauderdale on AirDNA, we wanted it to be east of Highway 1. That's where all the top performing properties were. And this one was near Lauderdale by the Sea, which is also a cluster of properties that were top performers. So we were very specific on the location. We needed a pool, we needed it to be heated, and we wanted to accommodate at least 10 guests. So we found this property. It was like, when I say maybe 50 feet west of Highway 1. It was right on the brink of, any further west, I probably wouldn't have bought this property, but it was close enough to the other top performers that it made sense. We bought this property, or really we went under contract for it at $850, and we ended up paying $850 for it, but it appraised for $825. So being a seller's market at the time, we did not have very much negotiating power. And because the realtor also owned the property and it was experienced in the area, he knew that we didn't have much negotiating tactics there. So this was one of the few times that we were unable to get the seller to pay for the majority of our closing costs. And we had to pay what's known as an appraisal gap. So the property appraised, it's very subjective, right? An appraiser comes in and looks at comps in the area. Sadly, they used 3-bedroom comps for 2 out of the 3 properties as comps to appraise this one, which is a 4-bedroom property, which is ridiculous in my opinion. Besides the point, I'm not still upset about it. So we had to pay $25K out of pocket for that appraisal gap. We put 20% down, and we did an investment loan. We were unemployed at the time, right? Really just start living off our investment. So I couldn't qualify without 2 years of tax returns with rental income and whatnot. So we had to pivot to what's known as a DSCR loan. That's a debt service coverage ratio loan. So with these loans, the terms are not quite as friendly as a conventional investment loan, right? There's prepayment penalties. Typically you have to put more down. The rate is usually a little bit higher. But what's cool about it is the lender is now going to look at the assets ability, right? The projected revenue, and the debt service coverage ratio. They just want the revenue of that property to cover the mortgage on a 1-to-1 ratio instead of looking at my DTI, my debt to income ratio. So instead of me qualifying for the loan, while technically I still am qualifying for it because they're looking at my credit score, my proof of funds, they're not looking at my DTI, they're looking at the DSCR. So 20% down, total down payment, $165,000. By far the most we've ever put down on a property at that point in time. Closing costs incurred, $36,713. Now this property, we spent a bunch of money in rehab, some inside, mostly in the backyard. We kind of redid the pool area. We added a pergola, an outdoor kitchen, just like really grade A materials. We did a bunch of landscaping and uplighting on the trees, lit up the palm tree. The reason we spent so much money on the backyard space, if you look at Fort Lauderdale, every single top property has an amazing outdoor space. You want to basically sell travelers that they have their own personal resort outside. So this property had a good space outside, but it was just like dated, old, dingy, and not super attractive. So we knew if we wanted to get premium rents for it and to make this investment worth it and have good return, we had to put money in the backyard. So we spent a total of $182,441 on rehab. I know that's a crazy amount of money, but just remember, this is our 5th property at this point. We worked up to this. The total gap for the appraisal cost was $24,900 technically. And then we spent $56,114 on furniture. Now this is more than I would typically spend on a 4-bedroom, but you have to budget accordingly for what you want to add design-wise in addition to just the pieces of furniture. And this had such a big outdoor space. We also had to budget for like sunbathing chairs. We put in an outdoor shower. We had outdoor kitchen chairs, outdoor TV, fire pit, all these things. So all in for $465,168. And I know you guys are probably like, oh my gosh, I don't have that kind of money. I didn't either when I first started. We worked up to this point. The reason we invested so much money in this property is because we knew that we could take the cash flow potential, or the revenue potential rather, up from like 100K to north of 200,000 a year. So it was well worth it. Also, I love doing the BRRRR strategy: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So we can buy it, add value to it. The value of the property is now higher. Now we still haven't done a cash out refi because rates went up, but we still likely will at some point in time, and we could take out a few $100,000 worth of equity tax-free and reinvest it into another property. This property today would probably appraise between 1.2 to 1.3 million. And it's been a pretty solid investment. It's been a little bit of a headache with some of the permitting, not on the short-term rental side, but on like the building stuff, because you have to apply for permits, which I didn't know what we had to apply for at the time. So we didn't apply for certain things in the backyard, and a neighbor called and we got dinged by the city. All in all, we still had to go through the same process, and we were able to rent out, thankfully, during that period of time. That was quite a lengthy process. We're almost done with it over a year later, which is nuts. But all being said, this property has some major cash flow months and has some really slow months. It's actually more seasonal than I thought it would be. September and October, very slow. But then you get to December, we had like a $22,000 cash flow month, nuts. January, really busy again. February, really good. March, another $18,000 or $20,000 cash flow month. So this property should cash flow 6 figures a year, if not creep up towards the 150K a year range. Hopefully, is what the goal is. We're just about to finish 1 full year as a short-term rental. So I'm interested to look at the first 12 months of cash flow, and then I'm interested to see what 2023 will do as a whole. Because we launched it last year in May, and that's right after the busy season ended. So we had a couple okay months, and then finally it really started to pick back up. If you guys are ever investing into a hyper-seasonal market, it's probably better to buy during the slower season just because people aren't as eager to buy vacation homes during that time. But it's kind of difficult because if you do that, you have to make sure to budget for the slower season. If it's really seasonal, like more seasonal than Fort Lauderdale, and you have to budget for holding costs, if you can't rent it enough to make a profit during like 2 or 3 months slow time, make sure you're budgeting for that accordingly. But yeah, anyways, this property's been great. It was our 5th one. We have 7 total today. Those 7 will easily do over $1 million a year on Airbnb and Vrbo and direct bookings just in total revenue, and our cash flow should be north of 500,000. It's been a roller coaster. We accomplished this all in about 3 years, or 3 years and 4 months to be exact. If you guys want to learn how to do this, I honestly cannot recommend it enough. I've taught over 1,000 people how to do this exact same strategy. Just go to bnbinvestoracademy.com. I'll drop a link to it below as well. But if you don't, hopefully you subscribe to this channel and get tons of free value from this content here. And I hope to see you guys again in the future.